Inside the pillar, the system confirmed. 2-star God of Wealth, SSS rank. The immediate effect was a 10-fold boost to base attributes per level gained going forward. 10,000 points per level instead of the 100 points I'd been getting before the first advancement. 2 consecutive SSS rank evaluations compounding on each other. 2 new skills came with it. The first was compound interest. Cost is 100 gold per use, and it deals 1 point of damage on first hit. If I hit the same target again within 10 seconds, the damage doubles from the previous hit. Every hit after that doubles again. By the 20th consecutive hit, it's over 500,000 damage. By the 30th hit, it's past 500 million. The only constraint is keeping hits on the same target within 10-second windows. As long as I have gold and can stay on target, the damage has no ceiling. The second was price gouging. Costs 10,000 gold per second to maintain. Designates a 1,000 by 1,000 meter area where any enemy that casts a skill must pay 100,000 gold coins or lose 1% of their maximum HP instead. Monsters don't carry gold, so every skill cast inside the area costs them 1% HP automatically. A boss that spams skills 100 times inside the zone kills itself. My upkeep cost is 10,000 per second. Less than Little Orange Cat earns in a day. Outside, the plaza was packed. Everyone agreed the phenomenon was bigger than Shenjing Lei's. His had covered half the sky. This covered all of it, plus the gold rain. Nobody outside yet knew who was inside. Outside, the general assumption was that whoever was inside had to be doing a 4th advancement. A 2nd advancement couldn't produce a phenomenon that size. Someone suggested asking the staff member at the side door. The staff member confirmed. Level 200, 2nd class advancement. The plaza went quiet, then loud, then quiet again. Nobody could accept it. A 2nd advancement creating golden rain across the entire sky was something nobody had seen or heard of. Someone asked who it was. Most people didn't know the name when Cheng Xuan said it. Lu Fang. He explained. 2 people had been specially recruited into the training camp before reaching level 200 in this batch. Shenjing Lei was the first. The second was me. No academy affiliation. Ordinary high school student, 18 years old. That landed harder than the phenomenon itself. Senior students who'd been comparing themselves to each other started feeling their legs go weak. A few of them mentioned they'd gone to observe the new batch training under Instructor Mo and hadn't seen me. Cheng Xuan told them why. On the 3rd day, I'd challenged all the new recruits in a 1 versus all competition and swept every one of them. After that, Instructor Mo exempted me from all group training and gave me autonomous training rights. They wouldn't have seen me because I'd been in the dungeon area the entire time. The golden pillar faded. I walked out. The senior students couldn't process the autonomous training privilege. In the training camp's entire history, even people who now ruled over regions of the Dragon Kingdom had trained with the main group when they were here. No exceptions had ever been made. Several faction representatives immediately started thinking about recruitment. Cheng Xuan told them not to bother. He'd already tried, and I wasn't joining anyone. Someone pointed out Zhou Chengyu, the current top-ranked person in the training camp, standing quietly at the back of the crowd. Cheng Xuan asked if he felt pressure. Zhou Chengyu looked at me walking over with Little Orange Cat and said I was indeed impressive, then asked what that had to do with him. By the time I reached level 300 or 400, he'd already have finished his time in the camp. He said the ones who should feel pressure were the seniors who couldn't graduate quickly. The ones about to get stepped on by a high school student who'd just arrived. A lot of expressions went dark at that. Shenjing Lei and Shi Yanqing pushed through the crowd to see what was happening and stopped when they saw it was me. Shi Yanqing said out loud that 20-something days ago I'd been level 114. I was now at level 200. For people like them, going from level 100 to 200 for the 2nd advancement took at least a year and a half. Shenjing Lei looked at me and felt a moment of doubt, then grabbed his blade, felt the blood god's power in it, and talked himself back into confidence. Same divine power category, uncertain outcome in a real fight. To reset himself further, he turned to Wei Ming and asked whose job change phenomenon had been bigger, mine or his. He was ready to hear roughly the same. Wei Ming looked at him with dead eyes and said mine was at least 10 times larger. Shenjing Lei stood there in silence while a cold wind blew through. He asked the blood god, somewhere above, whether his god was just 1 rank below mine. I got out of the crowd as fast as I could, told everyone I needed to practice my new skills, and disappeared before anyone could follow up on recruitment. I went straight to the dungeon plaza, reached for the Violent Wind domain stele, and remembered it was destroyed. I moved to the nearest level 199 Hell Mode dungeon instead. 1 clear, and I hit level 201. The level up gave me 10,000 points across all attributes instead of the previous amounts. My full stat panel showed everything at 120,950 across the board after that first level. 2 days later, I was at level 207. 6 levels in 2 days, and I was already annoyed at the pace slowing down. I made a mental note that reaching level 300 might take 2 or 3 months at this rate, which felt too long. Instructor Lu Chen called me to his office. He pulled up a world projection and showed me several new dungeon locations that had just appeared. He explained the international system. When new dungeons appear, countries compete for them in level brackets. Professionals in the 201 to 250 range compete for dungeons in that range, with no outside interference from higher level players. He asked if I wanted to enter the competition for my bracket. He made it clear there was no pressure. The competitions happen every few months, and he wouldn't force it. I said I'd go before he finished the sentence. I'd already told him I'd win back dungeons for the training camp. He said there was a domestic selection first. Top factions would send their best qualifying candidates, and only the highest performers would represent the Dragon Kingdom. He said getting a spot shouldn't be a problem for me. Then he mentioned 2 things I needed to know. The first, winning a dungeon on behalf of the country includes the right to designate where that dungeon's entrance appears. Most people choose their hometown. For me, that meant Jiangcheng, my home base, and where the Fangfang Chamber of Commerce operated. More dungeons in Jiangcheng meant more professionals and guilds flowing in, more traffic, more business. The city's foundation would jump to a different level entirely. Instructor Lu Chen mentioned the second point. The competition takes place on the front lines. That mattered to me beyond just the dungeon prize. My parents had disappeared somewhere deep in the front lines. Level 400 minimum to reach that area, so I couldn't get there this time, but at least I'd be stepping into that territory. 2 days later, I went to Instructor Lu Chen's office and found 2 other people there. Cao Pu, level 350, heavy sword, solid presence, competing in the 301 to 350 bracket. Fang Yin-Q, level 399, shadow leather armor, sharper presence than Cao Pu, competing in the 351 to 400 bracket. Both of them looked at me with some reservations. The 201 to 250 bracket typically draws fully equipped level 250 competitors, and I'd just barely passed 200. Instructor Lu Chen asked what level I was at. I said 211. The office went quiet. Cao Pu and Fang Yin-Q both reacted when they processed it. Going from 200 to 211 had taken them at least 2 months. I'd done it in a few days. Instructor Lu Chen shook his head and moved on. He noted there was nobody currently in the 251 to 300 range at the training camp, so just the 3 of us were going. Cao Pu and Fang Yin-Q both introduced themselves straightforwardly once the shock passed. I got a good impression of both of them. Instructor Lu Chen pointed out that neither of them was arrogant despite being strong, which apparently wasn't common among top-level geniuses. We set off. On the way, Instructor Lu Chen gave us context. Besides Tianlong, 2 other major domestic units were worth knowing about. The Earth Snakes, specialists in assassination and stealth, and the Elemental Walkers, a pure spellcaster group. Both were considered first tier below Tianlong, and the rivalry between all 3 was ongoing. He said if either of the other 2 units got ahead of Tianlong in any selection, they became insufferable about it. He told us to not only secure spots for the Dragon Kingdom, but to make sure Tianlong came out on top. Cao Pu hit his chest. Fang Yin-Q said she was in. I said the same. About 2 hours later, we reached Longxin City, one of the Dragon Kingdom's core inland hubs. Even from the air, the density of high-level professionals on the streets was visible. We landed at the Longxin Peak Hotel, a skyscraper in the city center with a spatial folded miniature world on the top floor used as a combat arena. Instructor Lu Chen explained the selection format. Round-robin tournament within each level bracket. Top 5 per bracket form the national team. He handed us room keys, said the tournament started the morning after next, and left to meet old contacts. Cao Pu and Fang Yin-Q invited me to visit their alma maters. Genuine Academy and Star Academy were both in Longxin City, and they wanted to show me around. I thanked them and asked if there were good leveling spots in the city instead. Fang Yin-Q's smile went flat. She gave me directions to the Twin Star Professional Hall, the largest combat facility in the city, about 3 kilometers north. I was out the door before she finished. Cao Pu and Fang Yin-Q stood in the lobby afterward and quietly decided that if I could reach their levels before they graduated, that would be too embarrassing to live with. Fang Yin-Q canceled her alma mater visit on the spot and said she was going to level up instead. Cao Pu said the same. At the Twin Star Professional Hall, and the main practical combat facility for professionals and the training ground for both top academies. Someone recognized me the moment I walked in. It was Wang Yiqing, someone I knew, standing near a rest area in light armor. He punched me on the shoulder and said he couldn't believe it was actually me. Wang Yiqing was smart enough not to ask details about what I was doing in Longxin City. He said the Fangfang Chamber of Commerce had stabilized things enough in Jiangcheng that he'd handed off his business management and focused on studying. He'd placed first in Jiangcheng and 200th nationally in the college entrance exam and gotten into Genuine Academy. Their summer training camp had brought him here early. I congratulated him and asked where the leveling area was. He pointed me to the teleportation stillies and offered to show me around. When I picked a level 211 Hell Mode dungeon, he froze. He was level 40. He understood intellectually that the gap between 40 and 211 was enormous, but seeing it directly still knocked him sideways. I went in and left him staring at the stele. While Wang Yiqing was still processing it, another student from the Genuine summer camp walked over. Gu Chengfeng, this year's national top scorer on the college entrance exam, and the standout genius of the summer program. Wang Yiqing and he were close. Gu Chengfeng asked what he was staring at. Wang Yiqing said he'd run into someone he couldn't imagine catching up to even in his dreams. Gu Chengfeng pushed back on that. He was national number 1, he said, so who among their peers could be stronger? Wang Yiqing told him plainly, that title was only his because the person in question hadn't sat the exam. Truly powerful people were already getting recruited by special forces before the exam started. Gu Chengfeng didn't take that well. He said he'd been offered a spot by a unit called Shadow Vanguard and turned it down, and he'd wait right there to see for himself what this person was like. He asked what level dungeon I'd gone into. Wang Yiqing said 211. Gu Chengfeng had no response to that. Inside the Netherbone City dungeon, I was clearing fine but noticed the experience, and drop rates were noticeably worse than the training camp dungeons. Same Hellgrade difficulty, but elite monsters here gave around 3.8 to 3.9 million experience, against 7 to 8.5 million at the training camp, and drops were sparse even with the Lucky Coin's 20% bonus active. I made a note to appreciate the training camp's dungeon quality more. Without it, my leveling speed would have been less than half of what it was. Outside, Gu Chengfeng was explaining to Wang Yiqing why we'd have a long wait. He said Longxin City dungeons had monsters with at least 50% higher stats and skill frequency than outside dungeons. He'd been able to clear Hell mode in half an hour back home, but here he was struggling with Hard mode in an hour. He gave me 3 hours as a generous estimate. Then the twin-star boundary-breaking bell went off. 2 massive bell tolls that silenced the entire hall before erupting into chaos. Professionals everywhere jumped up. The running assumption was that a combined team from Genuine and Star Academy had broken a record on a level 280 dungeon. Everyone rushed toward the commotion, including Gu Chengfeng, who grabbed Wang Yiqing to go with him. The level 211 stele started shaking. I walked out. Wang Yiqing checked his watch. 10 minutes had passed since I went in. He assumed I'd been eliminated and came over to ask if I was okay. Then the stele lit up gold. The clear confirmation. I said I was fine and asked what was wrong. Both of them put together what had happened at the same time. Gu Chengfeng's sneer was still on his face, but his eyes had gone blank. Wang Yiqing asked in a hoarse voice if I'd actually cleared it. I said yes, normally. Wang Yiqing told me Longxin City gave out a twin-star boundary-breaking medal and a substantial reward for breaking dungeon records. I said a medal sounded like too much trouble and pressed the stele again. I was back in before he finished responding. Gu Chengfeng stood there in silence for a while after I went back in. Wang Yiqing checked on him. Gu Chengfeng said slowly that he understood my state of mind. Not caring about the medal wasn't indifference to fame, it was disdain. He compared it to an adult having zero interest in competing with 3-year-olds for a gold star sticker. To everyone else, the twin-star boundary-breaking medal was the highest local honor. To me, it was a children's game. He said he'd been smug about being national top scorer, and now he just felt like a joke. The gap was too large. Then the bell rang again. The crowd assumed it was the level 280 team from Genuine and Star Academy who'd just set their record, cut from 50 minutes 12 seconds down to 48 minutes 45 seconds. The hall went into an uproar over it. Someone in the crowd pointed out the bell had actually rung twice, and people started guessing about system errors or double counting. Wang Yiqing and Gu Chengfeng looked at each other, only they knew the first bell had been mine. A level 211 Hell mode solo clear in 10 minutes. 1,000 meters up in a cloud-level office, Instructor Liu Chen was having tea with Feng Jiming, the principal of Star Academy. Feng Jiming had just seen the data come through and said he finally understood why Instructor Liu Chen couldn't stop talking about me. Instructor Liu Chen suggested quietly that Feng Jiming use his authority to hide the record. Feng Jiming agreed without hesitating. I was no longer in the same category as other professionals, and comparisons served no purpose. He wiped my record from the system entirely and set my future activity in the hall to non-public display. Then Feng Jiming's tone shifted. He said the tea was just a pretext. He actually needed Tianlong's help with something serious. Feng Jiming got to the real point. 15 dungeons behind Star Academy had been contaminated by an unknown abyssal power, and fused into a single massive mutated dungeon. The contamination was still expanding. If nobody cleared the source within a month, the dungeon would erupt and potentially pull half of Longxin City into void turbulence. The problem was entry restrictions. The fusion had made the internal space fragile. Only professionals below level 350 could go in. Anyone higher approaching the barrier would cause a premature eruption. 3 groups had already gone in and failed to reach even a tenth of the way through. Instructor Liu Chen agreed without hesitation. Protecting the Dragon Kingdom's stability was Tianlong's obligation. He said Xiaopu was the strongest person he'd brought who was below level 350, and after the selection tournament he'd send him in. While they were talking, the Breaking Realm bell rang again. Feng Jiming pulled up the back-end data. A level 250 Hell mode dungeon, solo clear, 50 minutes and 5 seconds. By someone named Luo Qichin. Instructor Liu Chen recognized the name, the standout rising talent of the Earth Snake Special Forces for the past 2 years. Tianlong had tried to recruit him, and he'd refused, saying he wanted to stay in Earth Snake and lead them to beat Tianlong instead of joining the winning side. His level 250 solo clear in 50 minutes was a genuine achievement by any standard. Feng Jiming asked if they should hide this record too. Instructor Liu Chen left it to him. Feng Jiming decided to leave it public. The achievement was extraordinary, but still within comprehensible range. It would give the other young professionals something to measure themselves against without completely destroying their confidence. Down in the hall, the bell brought the crowd running to the level 250 stele. Luo Xichen walked out. Early 20s, dark purple armor, Earth Snake standard issue. Cold presence. Like a drawn blade. The crowd recognized the armor and started buzzing about why someone from the Earth Snake Special Forces was here. The crowd saw the stele data and went silent for 2 seconds before erupting. Previous record for the level 250 Hell Mode dungeon was 58 minutes, 30 seconds set by a Star Academy team. Luo Xichen had cut it by over 8 minutes, solo. The hall couldn't process it. Luo Xichen barely glanced at his own record. He told his Earth Snake teammates the dungeon was too weak. Low intelligence monsters, bad stats. He hadn't even finished warming up before the boss fell. One teammate pointed out he should be careful not to accidentally level past 250 before the selection tournament, since that would bump him to a different bracket. Luo Xichen said it didn't matter. Below 250, he had no real opponents anyway, and if he crossed the threshold, he'd just compete in the 251 to 300 bracket instead. He walked out with his hands in his pockets. The crowd parted for him and his teammates without being asked. After they left, people exhaled. Word spread that this was why so many Special Forces personnel had been arriving in the city. The national selection tournament was the day after tomorrow. A veteran professional in the crowd explained to some younger ones that the 5 great academies, for all their reputation, were still schools. The Special Forces recruited from the very top of those schools. Someone who could solo a Hell Mode dungeon was operating in a different category entirely. Nearby, the Quanglan squad, the team that had just broken the level 280 record by a full minute, sat in the rest area looking deflated. Their captain said they'd thought cutting a minute off a record was impressive. Then before they'd even cooled down, someone solo cut the level 250 record by 8.5. A Star Academy mage next to him said she'd had some hope of securing a national selection spot. That hope was fading fast. The Quanglan squad captain consoled the group. The people in the Special Forces were the best of the academies anyway, so losing to them wasn't embarrassing. That helped settle the mood slightly. Someone brought up that Tianlong was still ranked above Earth Snake overall, so presumably their same-level talent would be even stronger. The shield warrior in the group pushed back on that. Tianlong's number 1 status was about depth and overall record, not guaranteed dominance at every individual level tier. Earth Snake had unique advantages in assassination and single-target burst, and Luo Xichen was a rare anomaly even across all the forces. Then the bell rang again. The captain laughed tiredly and said it was probably just another Special Forces warm-up. Over the next 2 days, the bell kept going off. Records fell across multiple dungeon levels. Elemental Walkers, Earth Snake, Shadow Vanguard, a berserker named Jiang Duxing. The Academy geniuses went numb from it. A quiet observation started circulating. In all the broken records below level 300, not a single name was from Tianlong. People from other forces started making remarks about Tianlong having no young talent. On the morning of the tournament, Chaopu asked me why I hadn't broken any records over the past 2 days, given my strength. I said honestly I hadn't been paying attention. I was just running clears back to back and didn't have time to think about records. Fang Yinqiu covered for me, telling Chaopu that long-standing records were usually set by elite coordinated teams and I'd been running solo, so it was reasonable I hadn't touched them. Chaopu accepted that and switched to giving me advice. The Earth Snake and Elemental Walker representatives were all capped near level 250, so I'd be at a level disadvantage. He told me not to push too hard in the arena. I nodded and said I'd keep it in mind. Feng Yinqiu vented about Tianlong's entry requirements being so high that most recruits came in around level 300, leaving a gap in the 200 to 300 range that other forces were now using to mock them. Instructor Lu Chen walked in and told us it was time. We headed to the top floor. In the elevator, Instructor Lu Chen brought up the noise from outside. Luo Xichen and the others making names for themselves while Tianlong had no records to show. Chaopu and Fang Yinqiu were visibly irritated. I said to wait until I made my move. The storm would settle on its own. They were both startled by that. Instructor Lu Chen laughed and said it was well put, which only added to their confusion about where my confidence was coming from. The top floor opened into a massive spatial folded micro-world with a dark alloy arena at the center, surrounded by packed spectator sections divided by faction. Special forces, major guilds, top academies. The moment we walked in, a red-haired man from one of the Western viewing platforms called out to Instructor Lu Chen, mocking Tianlong for arriving last and suggesting we might have gotten cold feet. Instructor Lu Chen said the protagonist always enters last. The laughter in the room stopped. The hostility spiked considerably. Chaopu yawned. Fang Yinqiu looked amused. I was looking at the spatial folding technology around the arena. In the Zhenyuan Academy section, Gu Chengfeng was there as a spectator. His instructor had brought him to observe. The Academy's actual competing seniors were whispering about Tianlong having no records from the past 2 days. One senior at level 250 was already excited about the possibility of stepping on a Tianlong representative to make his name. Gu Chengfeng thought about that and said nothing. He'd spent the past 2 days thinking about what he'd seen at the Twin Star Professional Hall. He'd tried to look up my record in the back end using his instructor's authority. My name wasn't there at all. Not just unremarkable, completely absent. He stood at the stele for 2 hours before he worked out the only explanation that made sense. My clear speed had been so far outside normal range that the upper management of the hall had blocked all my data entirely to prevent widespread panic. In the Earth Snake section, the team leader pointed me out to Luo Xichin and told him I was the one to watch. Couldn't find information on me, but Tianlong wouldn't send anyone simple. Luo Xichin said winning wasn't the question, just how to win most impressively. His team leader told him to compete properly and not cause trouble. President Fang Jiming appeared above the arena and announced the rules. Virtual projection format, one-on-one round-robin within each level bracket. Top 3 scorers per bracket earn national spots. Competition runs from highest bracket to lowest. Fang Yinqiu went first for the 351 to 400 bracket. She went undefeated. One-shotted an Earth Snake assassin before he could touch her. Got close to an Elemental Walker mage through Shadow Warp and killed him in one strike and dealt 120 true damage hits in 3 seconds to shatter a genuine shield warrior's defense. Finished without her hair out of place. When instructor Lu Chen said she hadn't embarrassed Tianlong, she said the opponents were a bit weak. The people nearby who'd nearly lost came close to losing their composure. Cao Pu went next in the 301 to 350 bracket. His approach was the opposite of Fang Yinqiu's. No tactics, pure force. He took a forbidden fire spell head-on, tanked the aftermath, and swept the caster and their shield into pieces with a single strike. Went undefeated as well. When he came back, he wrapped his arm around my shoulder and asked if he'd been cool. I gave him a genuine thumbs up. He was satisfied. 2 brackets down, 2 perfect scores for Tianlong. The room had gone quiet. The other factions had a fire of humiliation building up, and the level 201 to 250 bracket was next. The crowd was getting frustrated watching Tianlong dominate every bracket. The general sentiment was that they'd take anyone beating a Tianlong representative even once. Instructor Lu Chen heard all of it and told us that being number 1 meant everyone wanted to drag you down. But as long as we kept winning, they'd stay below us holding it in. The 251 to 300 bracket finished without much incident. Then President Fang Jiming called the 201 to 250 bracket. I put Little Orange Cat down on the chair and walked to the testing area. The crowd's attention shifted almost entirely to me the moment I moved. Not because of anything impressive, just because I represented Tianlong and everyone was curious. Luo Xichin noticed his usual commanding attention had been redirected and was annoyed. 21 contestants lined up for the level check. The first 20 all showed 250, maximum bracket level, essentially standard for this competition. Then I stepped up. Level 214. The hall went silent, then erupted. 36 levels of stat and skill point difference against professionals, all capped at 250. People called Tianlong crazy. Luo Xichin looked at the number, laughed coldly, and said he'd been treating me as a major threat for 2 days and I turned out to be a 214. Before President Fang Jiming could start the round robin, Luo Xichin spoke up and said the format was too slow. He proposed a change. He'd fight all 20 other contestants simultaneously in the virtual space. If he lost, he'd withdraw from the entire competition and give up his slot. If he won, the remaining contestants could fight for the other 2 spots. The hall exploded. The other contestants' faces went livid. A genuine mage started yelling and let his elemental power go unstable. Luo Xichin ignored him and let out a fraction of his actual pressure. A black dragon phantom condensed in the air around him. The mage stumbled back 5 steps and sat down on the ground. Veterans in the stands picked up on Luo Xichin's aura pressure before he even moved. They said it exceeded what a level 250 professional should be able to generate, closer to level 300 range. His Earth Snake team leader just rubbed his temples and said he'd told him 100 times not to cause trouble. President Fang Jiming said changing the format required unanimous consent from all contestants. Everyone else agreed immediately. They figured 20-on-1 was Luo Xichin's funeral. When Fang Jiming got to me, I said I didn't care either way, as long as I got a qualification spot. That landed strangely with the crowd. Apparently, I came across as dismissing them even more thoroughly than Luo Xichin had. Melee mode activated. All 21 of us were projected into the arena simultaneously. Luo Xichin stood in the center and told the group that by agreeing to gang up on him, they'd already lost. Then black mist poured out of him, and his hands transformed. Pitch-black dragon-scale claws formed over 2 seconds, sharp enough to distort the air around them. He told everyone to come at once and use their strongest attacks. A berserker went first, full power, a great sword strike that distorted the void along its path. Luo Xichin sidestepped by a fraction. The blade hit the ground and made a crater dozens of meters deep. Before the berserker could adjust, Luo Xichin was already in front of him. One claw pierced through the berserker's epic great armor, squeezed, and the projection shattered. Instant kill. Luo Xichin shook his claw with mild disgust and said it was boring. The arena went silent. The geniuses who'd been ready to swarm him froze. I watched from the edge and noted the black aura and claw power. Decent. Outside, Feng Yinqiu told Instructor Lu Chen quietly that the power fluctuation from Luo Xichin's claws looked like divinity. Like what Shen Jinglei had shown. Cao Pu's expression shifted when he heard that. Instructor Lu Chen confirmed Feng Yinqiu's read. Luo Xichen had divinity, and Earthsnake had kept it hidden. He said the quality of geniuses in the past 2 years had been unusually high. Kaupu admitted that at equal level, he might not beat Luo Xichen. Inside the arena, the remaining 18 contestants recognized they had to coordinate. Shield warriors up front, assassins flanking, mages carpet bombing. Every skill they had came at Luo Xichen at once. Thunder, fire, sword aura, covering the sky. He didn't move. Black mist erupted from him, formed a massive evil dragon phantom in the air, and the dragon claws tore pitch-black cracks into the void itself. The combined barrage collapsed against it. Then he moved through the gaps and started picking people off. A mage's shield shredded, a shield warrior's blocking force absorbed and thrown 100 meters to shatter midair. One by one, white illumination lights went up across the arena. Outside, the higher-ups from every faction sat with tight expressions. Earthsnake had found something exceptional. Gu Chengfeng in the Genuan section was visibly fired up watching Luo Xichen. Then his gaze shifted to me, standing at the edge of the arena, not having moved once. He started wondering which of us was actually stronger. The general read from the stands was that Luo Xichen had first place locked, and the rest would fight for second and third. Feng Yanqiu told Instructor Lu Chen it wouldn't be shameful if I lost given the level gap, plus his divinity. Instructor Lu Chen just smiled and said losing wasn't necessarily the outcome. That left both of them completely confused about where his confidence was coming from. When the last contestant was eliminated, only Luo Xichen and I remained. He asked why I hadn't joined the group assault. If I had, the combined bombardment might have given me a tiny chance. Now that it was just me, what was I going to fight with? I shrugged and told him sincerely that he'd cleared out everyone else and saved me a lot of effort. I was actually grateful. The hall went quiet after I thanked Luo Xichen for clearing everyone out. Kaupu covered his face. Luo Xichen's expression darkened completely. He said I was arrogant and in a rush to die, then unleashed his full aura. Black mist, overwhelming pressure, sweeping toward me like a beast released. Outside, people started taking bets on how long I'd last. The consensus was under a second given the 36 level gap and Luo Xichen in full rage. I told him to stop shouting and called out Money 1 and Money 5. 2 gold lights erupted through the black mist like suns rising out of the ground. Money 1 hit the arena floor and raised earth barrier. A wall of golden light that sealed in front of me. Luo Xichen's dragon claw, full force, hit it. The barrier didn't crack. Luo Xichen's claw went numb from the rebound, and he tumbled backwards several meters before catching himself. The betting crowd went silent. The people who'd said I wouldn't last a second stared blankly at 2 golden behemoths whose aura felt heavier than a level 250 Hell Mode dungeon boss. Feng Yanqiu and Pu watched from the Tianlong section, equally stunned. Feng Yanqiu then worked out an explanation. She decided I must be a pure defense specialist. High defense, no output. That was why I hadn't broken any dungeon records, despite 2 days of grinding. A tank class couldn't produce the burst clear times needed to set records. Pu immediately agreed and said it all made sense. Instructor Lu Chen listened to them build this entire theory and smiled strangely. He said to keep watching. Luo Xichen's right arm was trembling and his dragon claw was cracked from the rebound. He said he'd keep hitting until the barrier broke and leaped up, compressing his black mist into a dragon spear tens of meters long aimed straight down. I told him it was my turn and called on Money 5. Money 5 grabbed the air and condensed a pure golden heavy sword, then launched off the ground and swung it down at Luo Xichen. Gravity, whirlwind, slash. A golden gravity storm formed in midair, with sword auras dropping like judgment. Luo Xichen immediately recognized he couldn't take it head on. He aborted his attack mid-flight, pulled all his black mist into a defensive shield, and screamed 2 skill names. The black dragon shield shattered in less than 1,000th of a second. The golden storm hit him completely. At the last possible moment, a life-saving skill triggered. Shadow Substitute, his level 200 trump card with a 24-hour cooldown. And he dematerialized out of the storm's path, reappearing 100 meters away in a shadow, drenched in sweat and shaking. He'd burned his single-use daily survival skill in round 1. Outside, the hall stayed silent for 5 seconds, then erupted. The crowd said the destructive power looked like a duel between level 300 to 350 professionals. The geniuses Luo Xichen had just one-shotted were now making bitter observations. Luo Xichen had taken them out effortlessly, and he'd almost been deleted in one hit himself. In the Tianlong section, Feng Yanqiu stood very still. She'd just finished explaining that I was a pure defense class with no output. Then Money 5 nearly hacked Luo Xichen into pieces. Pu turned to her and asked carefully if that was what she meant by output like scraping sand. She said she'd misjudged and asked how one class could be that strong in both attack and defense simultaneously. Instructor Lu Chen's smile got wider. The storm cleared and nobody could find Luo Xichen. No presence, no silhouette anywhere on the arena. The Earthsnake team leader exhaled. He knew Luo Xichen's actual second advancement class was Black Dragon Assassin, servant of the God of Darkness. His frontal power was real, but stealth and assassination were his actual specialty. In a direct fight he couldn't match me, but in the shadows he controlled the arena. I looked at the empty crater and noted out loud that he hadn't died, which was impressive given the level gap. Then I scanned the arena, found nothing, and activated price gouging. A translucent golden dome expanded from me to cover the entire kilometer radius of the combat space. Inside his stealth, Luo Xichin felt the premonition immediately. Then the system notification hit him. 100,000 gold coins deducted for having an active skill running inside the domain. His stealth was a skill. The moment it cost him gold, the payment triggered the domain's visual effect. Golden light and coin imagery erupted from his location like a searchlight in the dark. He was completely visible. I told Money 5 to send him off. Gravity Whirlwind Slash came down again. Luo Xichin tried to run, but the gravity debuff cut his speed. Nowhere to go. The sword hit him, and his projection shattered. He came back to his real body, sweating, trying to understand what had just happened. His absolute stealth had been broken by a fee charging area. He'd paid 100,000 gold just for being in a skill state, and the payment had lit him up like a beacon. The hall was silent for 10 seconds. Then the questions started. The crowd had watched Luo Xichin clear 20 professionals like they were nothing. Then I'd handled him defense, offense, and anti-stealth detection in under 3 seconds. They couldn't identify my class at all. Instructor Lu Chen said quietly that every time I made a move, it was something new. Feng Yinqiu and Qiao Pu finally understood where my earlier composure had come from. President Feng Jiming announced the result. I'd won the melee, and per Luo Xichin's own pre-match rule, lose and forfeit. The first national spot went to me. Luo Xichin was out of the competition entirely. The crowd summed it up. He'd spent the first half clearing out 19 competitors for me, then lost the second half. He'd made the wedding clothes himself. I walked off the virtual device, patted my clothes, and went back to the Tianlong section. Qiao Pu put his hand on my shoulder and said I'd hidden my strength way too deep. Feng Yinqiu stood there silently thinking about her earlier analysis. I said I hadn't hidden anything. And when they thought back, that was true. Everything I'd said before the match was just straightforward. Qiao Pu then brought up the dungeon record question again. If I was that strong, why no records at the Twin Star Hall? Instructor Lu Chen laughed and told them, my clear times had been so far outside normal range that the hall's upper management had blocked all my data entirely, to protect everyone else's confidence. That landed hard on both of them. On the Earth Snake side, Luo Xichin walked back hollow-eyed. His team leader handed him a recovery potion and said his talent was genuinely rare across the entire human alliance. I was just an unreasonable exception that couldn't be measured by normal standards. Then he asked Luo Xichin directly if he wanted to transfer to Tianlong. Luo Xichin was shocked at first. Then the team leader explained. Earth Snake and Tianlong both existed to develop power against the Abyss, not to compete with each other internally. Tianlong's cultivation resources were objectively superior. If Luo Xichin stayed in Earth Snake, the gap between him and me would only widen until it became permanent. Luo Xichin said he'd go. He said one day he'd press me into the arena floor. His team leader approved and said he'd speak to Instructor Lu Chen directly. Then, out of Luo Xichin's view, the team leader privately acknowledged to himself that some monsters simply operate outside the range of what humans can measure. The remaining 19 contestants fought for the other 2 spots in the 201 to 250 bracket. After what had just happened, nothing else felt particularly exciting to the audience. Instructor Lu Chen told the 3 of us we hadn't embarrassed Tianlong, then immediately said that securing spots was just the starting point. The international war was the real test. The best of our peers from every country in the world. Qiao Pu was ready for it. Feng Yinqiu said she wouldn't tarnish China's reputation. I felt a flicker of excitement internally, mostly because the competition was taking place on the edge of the front lines. Instructor Lu Chen laid out the format. There were 53 unexplored dungeons in the 201 to 250 bracket spread across the front line zone. All contestants enter freely. Clear first, country gets ownership. China's target was at least 3 dungeons per bracket, meaning each of us would have to go in solo and come out first in our chosen dungeon. No room for error. If you fell behind in a dungeon, there was no time to switch to another. Most countries would pool their 3 people onto one dungeon for a safe minimum. China was going for maximum. Feng Yinqiu said she'd take one in her bracket. Qiao Pu said the same. Then Old Shu from Earth Snake walked over with Luo Xichin and offered to transfer him to Tianlong. Instructor Lu Chen took him immediately and called it an unexpected gift. He noted that the credit for Luo Xichin's change of heart belonged to me. I shrugged. Feng Yinqiu suggested, half joking, that after the international war we send me on a tour of all the major forces in the Dragon Kingdom to recruit more talent by example. Qiao Pu loved the idea. Instructor Lu Chen told them to stop being ridiculous. Other units needed to breathe too. Everyone laughed. Then Instructor Lu Chen turned serious and told Qiao Pu about the fused mutant dungeon at Star Academy. Abyss contaminated, restricted to under level 350, currently collapsing. Feng Jiming needed someone to go in after the international war. Qiao Pu said to tell him not to worry about it. The domestic selection was over. The next morning we boarded a massive golden flying ship at Dragonheart's Peak helipad. Hundreds of meters long, built partly from an Abyss monster's skeleton, flight speed comparable to a level 600 professional. Everyone qualified for the international war boarded together. On deck, Qiao Pu and Feng Yinqiu were watching the land disappear below, and talking about the ship. I was quiet. I stood at the edge of the deck with my hands in my pockets, looking in the direction we were heading. Qiaopu noticed and asked what was wrong. Feng Yinqiu guessed I was nervous about facing world-level opponents. I said no. Just remembering some things. Instructor Lu Chen understood immediately. The front lines were where my parents had disappeared. He stepped over and started talking to shift my focus, asking how much I knew about the front-line battlefield. I told him honestly. Almost nothing. Textbooks barely mentioned it. When I was a child, I'd asked my parents what it was actually like, and they'd always said I'd know when I was strong enough. I said it seemed I was strong enough now. Instructor Lu Chen said yes, I was. Then he started explaining what the textbooks left out. 100,000 years ago, the job change crystal appeared on Blue Star without warning, giving humanity the power of professionals. At the same time, the Abyss arrived. An origin point that poured out endless monsters with no purpose except to destroy all life. Humanity fought for tens of thousands of years, paid a catastrophic price, and eventually contained the Abyss but couldn't eliminate it. The Abyss passage that generated the monsters was indestructible. Level 800 professionals had sacrificed themselves trying to damage it and left no mark. Blue Star originally had 5 continents. The central continent fell in the early wars and was sealed off with a barrier that confined Abyss activity to that region. That sealed zone became what's now called the frontline battlefield. The standoff had continued for 100,000 years. Then Instructor Lu Chen said the worst part. In the last 5,000 years, the balance had broken. Human professional growth had hit a bottleneck. The Abyss kept getting stronger, with some monsters now possessing intelligence exceeding humans. The top powerhouses had reached a conclusion. At the current trajectory, the ceiling barrier would break within 100 years. Within 1,000 years, humanity would be completely annihilated. The flying ship descended toward the front line. Looking over the railing, the view below hit everyone differently than expected. Hope City No. 1, China's first line of defense, had walls over 100 meters high covered in cracks and claw marks. Beyond the walls, the wilderness was full of collapsed watchtowers, destroyed defensive machinery, and large dark purple stains in the soil. Even from the air, it felt heavy. Instructor Lu Chen explained this region was China's rotation for hosting the international dungeon competition. We landed on an alloy plaza outside the gates and had to pass through an aura check. Dozens of ice blue crystal pillars forming a detection barrier before anyone could enter the city. Someone in the group muttered that it seemed excessive for just entering a city. Instructor Lu Chen shut that down immediately. He explained Abyss contamination. Monsters could infect professionals during combat without any visible wound, sometimes without the person even knowing. During the incubation period, they looked completely normal. When it erupted, they lost their minds and became internal weapons for the Abyss. He gave an example of a city where one contaminated high-level professional, mutated after entering, caused a breach, and the entire city, hundreds of thousands of professionals, was wiped out overnight. Nobody checked the aura lightly after that. Everyone passed. We entered the city. Inside was a functioning steel fortress. Disciplined, cold in style, high-level professionals in heavy armor moving through the streets, active formation light everywhere. City Lord Ding Shuo met us at the gate, a square-faced man built like an iron tower. After greetings, he turned serious quickly. He said dozens of countries had already arrived early, and the contestant quality this year looked like the highest in history, including people who'd attained divinity at the 2nd or even 3rd advancement. He also said China had performed too well in the previous 2 competitions and other countries had noticed. Fengzi country appeared to be organizing a coalition, and he had a feeling China would face coordinated suppression this time. Ding Shuo asked Instructor Lu Chen if he had confidence this time. Instructor Lu Chen said Long Nation geniuses were never weaker than others, and if countries wanted to suppress us jointly, they were welcome to try. Qiaopu and Feng Yinqiu echoed it, and the whole team's mood lifted immediately. Ding Shuo laughed and led us toward the competition area. The central square had 4 zones marked by golden rings, 1 per level bracket. Inside each zone stood dozens of massive bronze gates. The uncleared dungeons, each with its entry level marked in red energy. The square was already packed with teams from other countries, auras overlapping and colliding in the air. The moment Long Nation stepped in, Banye from Fengzi country walked over with his team and made a pointed comment about Instructor Lu Chen still being alive. Instructor Lu Chen replied without looking at him that since Banye wasn't dead yet, he needed to stay alive to burn paper at Banye's grave. Banye's expression went dark. Feng Yinqiu quietly explained to me that Fengzi country was a comparable national power on the same continent, and the rivalry was ongoing. One of the Fengzi country young contestants made a throat-slitting gesture at Qiaopu and me. Qiaopu was ready to start something immediately. I put a hand on his shoulder and told him to save the energy. We'd prove it inside the dungeons. Qiaopu looked at my eyes and stopped. He said quietly that the Fengzi country people were going to be unlucky. With an hour until the competition, people were calculating their dungeon choices. Feng Yinqiu planned for level 395, fewer competitors at that point. Qiaopu initially wanted 350, but Feng Yinqiu talked him down to 340 for a better success to difficulty ratio. Then they asked me. I said I planned to start from the lowest available, Level 201. Pu looked like I'd personally offended him. He said that was using a cannon to kill a mosquito. Feng Yanqiu was equally confused. Feng Yanqiu caught the implication of my words. Starting from level 201 meant I wasn't planning to clear just one dungeon. Pu processed that and immediately tried to talk me out of it. He said even if I cleared 2 or 3 low-level dungeons quickly, their combined value wouldn't match one high-level dungeon. Feng Yanqiu agreed. I said they made good points and I'd think it over. They relaxed. I hadn't agreed to anything. On the other side of the square, Banye was meeting with team leaders from several small countries. He laid it out plainly. Their contestants had no realistic chance of winning dungeons in a field this competitive, so they should do something more useful instead. His offer? Once the competition started, have their people follow Chinese contestants into the same dungeons and slow down our progress by any means available. In return, Fengzi country would share resources. The small country leaders agreed. The level check began. Every contestant from every country checked in at level 250, the tacit maximum for the bracket. Then the scanner hit me, level 214. The square went quiet, then erupted. Other countries thought China had sent a filler. Banye walked over and made a show of it, suggesting we'd be collecting my corpse after I got torn apart by monsters. Instructor Lu Chen told him he should have brushed his teeth before coming out. Then he said calmly that if China's level 214 newcomer outperformed Fengzi country's fully leveled veterans, that would be genuinely embarrassing for them. Banye gritted his teeth and said to wait and see. The portals opened. I walked straight toward the level 201 dungeon without looking at anything else. Feng Yanqiu and Pu exchanged a look, accepted that I was doing things my way, and headed to their own bracket portals. The moment all the Chinese contestants disappeared through the gates, participants from several countries across the square made eye contact and smiled. Instead of entering their own dungeons, they followed the Chinese contestants through the same portals. Banye's plan was already in motion. In the viewing stands, the Chinese powerhouses saw what was happening, and one of them slammed the railing. Banye stepped forward and said the rules allowed contestants to choose any dungeon freely. If the other countries wanted to enter the same dungeons as the Chinese contestants for a friendly exchange, that was entirely within the rules. The Chinese powerhouse was furious, but had no legal grounds to object. Instructor Lu Chen looked at Banye and said it seemed he was the one behind all this. Banye smiled and said there was no evidence, and Huaxia should just blame itself if it couldn't clear the dungeons fast enough. Then Instructor Lu Chen crossed the distance in an instant and slapped Banye across the face hard enough to send him rolling through the air and into the ground. Banye crawled up screaming about international etiquette and whether Huaxia wanted to start a national war. Instructor Lu Chen brushed off his palm and asked if Banye dared to start one. Another burst of energy erupted from him. Banye turned and ran. Instructor Lu Chen hit him again. He kept going until 4 Fengzi country powerhouses threw up a barrier between them and started smoothing things over, saying the juniors could fight in the dungeons, but the elders fighting outside was inappropriate. Instructor Lu Chen stopped, hands in pockets, and asked if they wanted to go too. They declined quickly. He pointed at Banye hiding in the crowd and said to consider himself lucky today. Banye, trembling, managed to say he'd noted the debt. The tension eased slightly. On the stands, powerhouses from other countries were mostly commenting that Banye had brought it on himself. Everyone knew Huaxia people were protective of their own, and once targeted would fight like they had nothing to lose. Provoking them was a poor decision. Then the conversation shifted to the dungeon situation itself. Each Chinese contestant now had several obstructors following them in. The general assessment was that Huaxia might come out empty-handed this time. Inside the dungeon, I was in a blood-red ancient forest. The monsters here had actual awareness. A massive bull-type creature nearby raised its head and watched me with genuine wariness, unlike the programmed behavior of cleared dungeon monsters. I decided to observe for a moment before sending the money ghosts out to sweep. 3 teleportation lights appeared behind me. All contestants choosing the same dungeon enter the same space. Everyone starts at the same point. First to kill the final boss wins ownership. The 3 who arrived were level 250 professionals from small countries, sent by Banye to block me. Their leader, Lu Lang, looked at my level and thought it was a waste of their talent to be assigned to a level 214 newcomer, but he had his orders. The plan was simple. Pin me in place, don't let me advance. They formed a pincer formation and Lu Lang told me to stay put and I'd leave unscathed once someone else cleared the dungeon. He pulled out a frost sword to make the point. I kept smiling. Other contestants in the dungeon noticed the scene, laughed at the overkill of 3 level 250s blocking a level 214, and headed deeper into the forest. In their view, I was already out of the competition. I snapped my fingers. 10 money ghosts appeared. Lu Lang barely had time to register what he was looking at before I told Money 5 to handle it. Money 5 took one step. The ground cracked in a spiderweb pattern from the impact. Pulled out its giant sword and swept it horizontally without using a skill. Just a basic swing. The 3 professionals' defensive skills, capable of withstanding a level 250 boss attack, shattered on contact in less than half a second. 3 white lights went off simultaneously. All 3 eliminated. The other contestants, who'd just walked a few steps ahead, heard the deafening impact and turned around to look. Their expressions froze. Where Lu Lang and his two companions had been standing, there was now a 100-meter sword chi crater. The other contestants in the dungeon stared at the empty space, then at me, standing at the edge with 10 money ghosts behind me. 3 level 250 professionals had been force teleported out by a single basic swing. The room ran out of reasons to stay. One professional took out a teleportation stone and left. The rest followed immediately. In moments, the level 201 dungeon was empty except for me and the money ghosts. I pointed forward and they swept into the forest. Outside, Banya was still nursing his swollen face and imagining Huaxia coming back empty-handed. Then 3 white lights appeared at the level 201 dungeon gate. The passive forced teleportation kind, not voluntary exits. Lu Lang and his companions stumbled out shaking. Their own country leaders dropped from the stands to ask what had happened. Lu Lang said I'd snapped my fingers, summoned 10 golden monsters, and one of them had insta-killed all 3 of them with a single sword swing. They couldn't even put up resistance. The stands went quiet, then chaotic. 3 level 250 professionals insta-killed by a level 214 summon with 1 attack. Banya stood up too fast and pulled his face wound. Before he could process it, the dungeon gate started flashing again. More contestants came out voluntarily. One named Mike explained simply that he didn't think he could compete, and since the exploration had just started, he'd rather switch dungeons while there was still time. When multiple top contestants from different countries gave the same assessment independently, there was only one conclusion. Everyone in that dungeon had decided there was no point competing against me. The audience turned to look at the Chinese delegation. The question forming in everyone's mind was the same one nobody had an answer to. If I could insta-kill 3 level 250 experts, why had I chosen a level 201 dungeon? Banya in the stands decided I must lack courage since I'd chosen the lowest level dungeon. He said a genius without boldness would never amount to much. The small country leaders around him agreed enthusiastically. In the Chinese section, some of the other Huaxia experts also sighed that it was a waste of talent. Instructor Lu Chen asked who said my goal was only 1 dungeon. They froze, then pointed out that by the time I finished, other dungeons would already be taken. Instructor Lu Chen smiled and didn't explain further. Inside blood-colored samsara, the money ghosts swept through without resistance. I held Little Orange Cat and followed at a walking pace. The final boss, a 100-meter tree demon, went down. Time, 18 minutes 42 seconds. The dungeon control core dropped. A small bronze-glowing stone that once picked up determined dungeon ownership. I noted the key mechanic. Ownership only required whoever picked up the control core, not necessarily the contestant personally. A summoned creature picking it up still counted. I came back out to the plaza under 20 minutes. The crowd debated whether I'd been forced to retreat by danger, since clearing in that time seemed impossible. Then the level 201 gate's red energy dimmed. The cleared signal. The plaza went silent for 3 seconds, then erupted. Banya screamed that it was cheating. Instructor Lu Chen, to his credit, also muttered something under his breath. I stood in the center of the plaza and said quietly that since the rules didn't limit contestants to 1 dungeon at a time, I wouldn't be polite. I snapped my fingers, called out all 10 money ghosts, and assigned each one to a separate dungeon. Money 1 to level 202, Money 2 to level 203, and so on down the line. Then I picked one for myself. 10 money ghosts and I all disappeared through different bronze gates simultaneously. The entire plaza watched this happen in complete silence. The plaza went into full chaos. People were asking whether summons could even solo dungeons independently. The answer was yes. Dungeon ownership was determined by whoever picked up the control core from the final boss, and summons picking it up still counted toward their owner. 11 bronze gates lit up simultaneously. Banya screamed internally that I was courting death. Unexplored dungeons required on-the-spot commands and status buffs from the professional, so brainless summons couldn't possibly handle a boss alone. Instructor Lu Chen remembered my first-class advancement quest. He started laughing and couldn't stop. When his Huaxia colleagues asked what was wrong, he said his estimate of 4 or 5 dungeons had been too conservative. I was trying to take the entire level 200 bracket in one go. They thought he'd lost his mind. He told them to keep watching. Inside the level 203 dungeon, Lava Bone Tomb, a contestant named Lu Jianshuang from another country was already 20 minutes in and making the fastest progress. She was ice attribute against a fire and lava dungeon, near perfectly countered, moving at top speed. She was confident the first clear would be hers. Then Money 2 came through. An elite explosive flame earth lizard jumped at Liu Jianshuang. Before she could activate her skill, a golden fist dropped from above and smashed the lizard's head into pieces with one punch. Money 2 didn't look at her, didn't slow down, just stomped off toward the dungeon depths and disappeared into the heat waves. Liu Jianshuang stood there. That lizard would have required 2 or 3 combos from her at minimum. Money 2 had punched it with no skill, no follow-through. Just raw force. She recognized it was a contestant summon and pushed herself to maximum speed to chase it. She reached the first fork and found no trace of it. She picked a direction at random and kept running. Half an hour later, she was 1/5 of the way through and already burning through her stamina reserves, estimating 2 more hours to the boss. She was anxious. She had no idea what she was actually racing against. Liu Jianshuang was about to keep moving when the dungeon's forced teleportation activated, meaning someone had already obtained the control core. She'd completed 1/5 of the dungeon. She hadn't even seen the boss. Outside, a teleportation light appeared at the level 203 gate. Everyone expected a human. Money 2 walked out holding the lava bone, tomb control core in its golden palm. The gate dimmed. Cleared. Half an hour. Solo by a summon with no master present. Liu Jianshuang came out with the other displaced contestants, saw Money 2, and recognized it as the same thing that had one-punched the lizard earlier. She'd pushed herself to maximum effort without stopping and reached 1/5 of the progress. The summon had been at least 5 times faster than her. The realization broke something in her confidence. Banyan stepped forward and accused Huaxia of cheating, pointing out that the competition was hosted in Hope City No. 1, Huaxia's territory, and suggesting we'd tampered with the dungeons. The other national leaders, still in shock, started looking at the Huaxia delegation with visible suspicion. The situation shifted. Instructor Lu Chen walked to the edge of the viewing stand and called Banyan a toad at the bottom of a well. Banyan demanded evidence or an admission of cheating. Instructor Lu Chen said the burden of proof was on the one making the accusation, not on Huaxia, and that Huaxia had done nothing wrong and would not be proving its innocence on Banyan's demand. Banyan was mid-sentence when 3 more teleportation lights went up simultaneously. 3 more money ghosts walked out holding control cores. 3 more bronze gates dimmed. 4 dungeons cleared total in about half an hour. Someone dropped their weapon. The plaza went silent. Banyan completely broke down and turned to every national leader in the stands, saying Huaxia was trying to take all the dungeons for themselves and demanding an investigation and suspension of my competition. Dozens of countries' powerhouses stood up together and pressured Huaxia. Instructor Lu Chen told them that without evidence, anyone who stopped a Huaxia contestant from competing normally was declaring war on Huaxia. The entire Huaxia section stepped forward in unison. Then I walked out of my own dungeon, casually flipping a 5th control core in my hand. I noticed the atmosphere and looked at the 4 money ghosts that had already returned, then did a quick mental debrief about their different clearing speeds based on their post-mutation tendencies. Banyan screamed at me about cheating. Instructor Lu Chen landed in front of me like a wall and told me to ignore the jealous rabid dogs and keep clearing. He'd handle the rest even if the sky fell. I thanked him and stepped out from behind him. I told Banyan that since I'd caused the problem by clearing too fast, I'd solve it myself, and that I might even make a windfall out of this situation. Banyan challenged me to prove my innocence. He had an investigative skill called Eye of Truth Seeking, a traceless observer that could be brought into dungeons without triggering monster aggro or dungeon rejection. He offered to attach it to my money ghosts so everyone could watch the clears in real time. The national leaders approved. The logic was that a guilty person would crack under that kind of scrutiny. I agreed without hesitation. Then I said my time was valuable and my reputation wasn't free. If the livestream proved I hadn't cheated, Fengzi Country would transfer all dungeon ownership rights they obtained in this tournament to Huaxia at no charge. My counteroffer hit the Fengzi Country section like an explosion. The terms were clear. If the livestream proved I was clean, Fengzi Country transferred all their tournament dungeon ownership rights to Huaxia for free. If they won, I'd give up all my cleared dungeons, withdraw from this competition, and never step onto an international battlefield again. Banyan hesitated. The other national leaders who'd just backed him wouldn't let him back down now. They'd already put themselves on the line supporting his accusation. He was trapped. He accepted. The moment he did, 6 teleportation lights went up simultaneously. The remaining 6 money ghosts walked out, each holding a control core. 6 more bronze gates dimmed. 10 dungeons cleared total, including the one I'd done myself. Lu Fang urged Banyan to hand over the Eye of Truth and stop wasting time. Banyan threw the glass eyeball over. I tossed it to Money 5 and then turned to look at 11 new bronze gates. Uncleared, fresh. All 10 money ghosts and I entered simultaneously. 11 gates lit up. The Eye of Truth projected Money 5's perspective onto a massive screen in the plaza. Everyone watching held their breath. Money 5 entered the level 213 Thunder Ruins dungeon and immediately started sprinting. So fast, the scenery at the edges blurred into light trails. The crowd gasped at the movement speed alone. Banyan tried to stay calm and pointed out that speed was useless without combat sense in an unexplored dungeon with intelligent monsters. Right on cue, a thunder-armored pangolin ambushed from underground with perfect timing, claws aimed directly at Money 5's chest. Money 5 didn't dodge. The claws hit solidly. Banyan laughed. He called it a simpleton with no combat intuition, said it was definitely going to die from that hit. He didn't finish the sentence. The thunder-armored pangolin's claws hit Money 5's chest and left no mark. Money 5 didn't slow down. It reached out, grabbed the monster by the head while it was still clinging to its chest and crushed it with one hand. Then it kept running. Liu Jianshuang, watching from the plaza, went pale. The other national leaders watching the screen were trying to process what they'd seen. Banyan's back was soaked in sweat. Instructor Lu Chen glanced at him with the expression of someone watching a fool dig his own grave. On screen, Money 5 moved like a bulldozer. Everything in its path crushed by raw strength without breaking stride. Then it hit a level 240 elite boss called Purple Thunder Vajra. a monster putting out pressure comparable to a final boss in a normal dungeon. Banye prayed for the first time since the bet. Money 5 stopped, drew the giant golden sword from its back, and used Gravity Whirlwind Slash. A gravitational field locked the Vajra in place first, then the golden storm hit it. When it cleared, the elite boss was minced meat. One skill, one shot. The plaza erupted. A summoned creature using skills independently, without the master present for energy support, violated every known principle of professional classes. Itano's legs gave out, and he sat down. In the Fengzi country section, one of their leading powerhouses grabbed Banye by the collar and demanded to know who told him to gamble the country's tournament resources against me. The other Fengzi country leaders piled on. Banye couldn't say anything. The surrounding national leaders who'd backed him earlier were now watching with pity and quiet amusement. The consensus was that Fengzi country had humiliated themselves completely, offended someone, lost their resources, and done it all voluntarily. Instructor Lu Chen laughed out loud and meant it. He said this tournament was going to be China's most profitable one ever. The national leaders watching had shifted from doubt to deep wariness. A genius like me meant China's dominance for the next 100 years was essentially guaranteed, and everyone knew it. The top geniuses who'd been teleported out and were watching from the plaza edge felt something else. Their confidence had been crushed. These were their country's best, handpicked and proud of it. Watching a summon that didn't even need its master present clear an unexplored dungeon entirely on its own, then one-shot a level 240 elite boss and a level 250 Lord tier final boss in under 5 minutes, left some of them with hollow eyes and shaking hands. The gap was too large to even think about chasing. The livestream ended when Money 5 picked up the control core and was teleported out. It walked back onto the plaza. The venue of thousands said nothing. Then 11 teleportation lights went off in rapid succession. All 11 bronze gates dimmed within 1 minute. Me and all 10 money ghosts came out simultaneously, each with a fresh control core. I looked at the dissolved screen and the stunned crowd, figured the broadcast had gone well, and turned to the Fengzi country section. Banye was slumped in his chair. I thanked him loudly for Fengzi country's generous contribution, and told him to call me again if he ever had another opportunity like this. He nearly spat blood, keeping himself together. Instructor Lu Chen jumped down from the stands and slapped me on the shoulder. I turned back to the remaining bronze gates, said I'd only taken 20-odd dungeons so far, and that wasn't nearly enough, and sent all 10 money ghosts and myself back in. The powerhouses in the stands went still. Someone did the math. The all-time record for a single country in one level bracket in tournament history was 5 dungeons. I had already passed 20 solo and was going back for more. Someone voiced what everyone was thinking. Was I planning to take every dungeon in the bracket by myself? The plaza went quiet again and stayed quiet as the pattern repeated. Bronze gates dimming one after another. Money ghosts walking out with cores and walking straight back in. Me yawning and switching gates. Monotonous. Terrifying. The pattern continued until the last bronze gate dimmed. All 53 unexplored dungeons in the level 200, 1 to 250 bracket had been cleared. Every single one. I walked back to the Chinese section and told Instructor Lu Chen the mission was complete, not one missed. He laughed and said it was done more beautifully than he could have imagined. The geniuses who'd been eliminated and were watching from the plaza edge looked at me differently now. When they'd first been knocked out, there'd been anger and jealousy. That was gone. The gap had moved past the point where those feelings made sense. When someone stands on a level that far above you, you don't envy them anymore. You just acknowledge what you saw. In the Fengzi country section, Banye stared at me with regret that went deep. He kept thinking about why a genius like that hadn't been born in his country instead. The national leaders who'd backed his pressure campaign earlier had developed collective amnesia and were now crowding around the Chinese section offering compliments. Instructor Lu Chen accepted them with poorly concealed pride while saying things like, "This kid just got a bit lucky, and he still has a long way to go." His expression said the opposite of his words. I looked over at the level 251 to 300 dungeon area and asked Instructor Lu Chen if I could enter a higher bracket's dungeons by challenging above my level. He said the rules didn't explicitly block it, but it required a majority vote from all country leaders present. He said before today that might have been possible. People would have voted yes, hoping to watch me fail. Now every other country would vote against it unanimously. They were afraid I'd sweep the higher brackets too and leave nothing for anyone. I shrugged and said I'd just watch then. The tournament settled into its normal pace after that. About an hour later, a level 288 dungeon gate dimmed and a Fengzi country contestant named Ji An walked out holding a control core, covered in blood from a hard fight, but triumphant. He threw his head back and laughed, then tidied himself up and waited for the crowd's reaction. The plaza was completely silent. People glanced at him once and looked away. Ji An came out of his dungeon covered in blood, first clear in the level 251 plus range, and waited for the crowd's reaction. Nothing. People glanced and looked away. He'd spent over 4 hours getting beaten up to clear one dungeon, and everyone's threshold had been reset by watching me clear 53 in under 3 hours. His achievement was objectively real, but it registered as boring by comparison. He went to the Fengzi country section expecting his own people to be excited. Banye couldn't even meet his eyes. Jian pushed for an explanation. One of the Fengzi country experts told him quietly that no matter how many dungeons Fengzi country cleared this tournament, all of them now belonged to Huaxia. He explained the bet. Jian almost fainted. When he finally heard the number, 53 dungeons, the entire bracket, swept by one person and 10 summons, he turned to look at me from across the plaza, and whatever remained of his arrogance left him completely. Kaopu came out of the level 350 dungeon shortly after, tired but holding his control core high. He reported a successful first clear and mentioned he'd been gang attacked 4-on-1 inside and fought them off. The Huaxia section gave polite, mild praise. Kaopu felt the underwhelming reaction and tried to emphasize how difficult it had been. He noticed I was sitting in the stands looking completely unbothered and asked if I'd also been attacked. I said there were a few people blocking the path at the start. He asked about my harvest. I said it was okay. 53 dungeons. Kaopu laughed it off and told me to stop joking. The entire level 201 to 250, bracket only had 53 dungeons total. Sweeping all of them alone was impossible. Nobody laughed at my answer. Nobody corrected me either. Kaopu looked at Instructor Lu Chen, then at Elder Li beside him. Elder Li patted his shoulder and confirmed I wasn't joking. Kaopu turned and looked at the 53 dark, lifeless bronze gates. Every single one out. The surrounding geniuses from other countries slumped in their seats. All real. Kaopu's control core dropped out of his hand and hit the ground. He remembered advising me before the competition to just pick a level 250 dungeon and play it safe. He'd been giving advice to someone who swallowed 53 dungeons in one go. The shame hit him hard. He walked to a corner of the stands, hugged his head, and squatted down without another word. I quietly asked Instructor Lu Chen if I should have not said it. He told me Kaopu would have found out anyway, and to let him sit with it. An hour later, Feng Yinqiu came back from the level 351 to 400 bracket, with slightly red eyes and apologized to Instructor Lu Chen. Another country had beaten her to the first clear on her chosen dungeon. She said she'd let everyone down and that China wouldn't hit the target of 3 dungeons for her bracket. Instructor Lu Chen told her it was fine, she'd done her best, and that Huaxia would still get 3 dungeons in her bracket, possibly more. She was confused. Kaopu stepped over and told her everything. The 53 dungeons, the bet with Banye, all of it. Feng Yinqiu's expression went through multiple phases before she turned around, saw me sitting calmly drinking water, and ran over and hugged me. I rubbed my nose and called it a basic operation. When the last dungeons cleared and the tournament ended, the collection phase began. Huaxia had over 50 bronze gates to move. Instructor Lu Chen stood in front of them and complained loudly, just loud enough for the surrounding country leaders to hear, that he hadn't brought enough spatial rings and hadn't expected the kids to be this productive. The experts nearby, each packing up 1 or 2 gates, stared at him in silence. Then he walked over to Fengzi Country's section, smiled brightly at Banye, congratulated him on capturing 8 dungeons in an outstanding performance, and held out his hand for the control cores. A bet was a bet. Fengzi Country's experts were furious, and one of them threatened to refuse paying. Instructor Lu Chen pointed out that hundreds of national leaders were watching, and that breaking a public wager would destroy Fengzi Country's international reputation permanently. The expert clenched his fists, closed his eyes, and handed over all 8 control cores. Instructor Lu Chen took them and walked away without looking back. All of Fengzi Country's anger converged on Banye. They knew that without his decisions, they would have been the second best performing country in the tournament. Now they were a global joke. Banye knew what was waiting for him when he got home. On the Huaxia flying ship heading back, I was on the sofa drinking juice. Instructor Lu Chen sat down across from me and confirmed the final number. 53 from my own clears, 8 from the Fengzi Country bet. 61 unexplored dungeons total. He asked how I wanted to allocate them. I said that before the competition, one of the training camp's dungeons had been destroyed because of me. I offered to give Tianlong 10 from the 61 as compensation. The other geniuses in the room reacted visibly. Giving away 10 unexplored dungeons casually was not a small thing. Instructor Lu Chen was quietly moved, but kept a straight face and said if one was damaged, then one was the compensation, not 10. He said Tianlong had its dignity and wouldn't take advantage of a student. He told me they'd take the single highest quality one from the full lot, and I could keep the rest. I agreed. For the remaining 60, I said to put them all in Jiangcheng. Everyone in the room went quiet for a second. Then the mental calculations started. 60 unexplored dungeons dropped into a 3rd-tier city. Professionals, guilds, and chambers of commerce would flood in immediately. Several of the young people from prominent families started thinking about contacting their families to move fast on Jiangcheng land and investment before word spread. Instructor Lu Chen said he'd arranged the coordination and left the cabin. Before anyone else could move, Feng Yinqiu was already standing in front of me. Feng Yinqiu stepped forward before anyone else could. The other geniuses who'd been working up their nerve stopped where they were. She reintroduced herself. Not as a Tianlong senior this time, but as a representative of the Fang Family Chamber of Commerce, one of the 4 major chambers in Longsan. She proposed a joint venture. The Fang family and my Chamber of Commerce each holding 50%, with the Fang family handling all the infrastructure, transportation networks, and resource monetization channels for the 60 dungeons. She pointed out that Jiangcheng was too small to absorb that kind of resource volume on its own. She also said 50-50 was exceptional terms. Normally, the Fang family would offer at most 20% to outside parties. Everyone watching thought I'd be insane to say no. I said no. The cabin went quiet. Fang Yinqiu's smile froze. She tried adjusting the offer. Buy out development rights on some of the dungeons, change the structure, anything. I kept refusing. I told her the Fang Chamber of Commerce had to remain 100% independent. No share dilution, no exceptions. What I didn't explain to her was the reason. The Lucky Cat's gold output scaled with the scale and purity of the forces under my direct control. Diluting ownership wasn't just a business decision. It was reducing my core resource generation, killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. I did offer an alternative. The Fang Chamber of Commerce would pay for the Fang family's services instead of sharing equity. Fang Yinqiu said that would severely slow my development without the Fang family's core resources behind me. I told her she was wrong and that my development speed wouldn't slow down. She looked at me for a moment, then accepted it. Services instead of partnership. She extended her hand and called it a happy cooperation. In the background, 2 noble family descendants debated my decision quietly. One called it stupid. I'd wasted a chance to climb into a higher circle. The other said plenty of founders had been pushed out after accepting major capital injections, and that capital was always profit-driven. He said he actually respected the call. On the flight back, Fang Yinqiu and I worked out the service arrangement. She said the most expensive early-stage work would be infrastructure, clearing the dungeons and installing teleportation arrays. The Fang family had a top 3 construction team in all of Huaxia. Under normal terms, the appearance fees and cross-city transport costs alone would be astronomical. She said she'd waive both entirely and provide materials at cost. I did the rough math. That was at minimum tens of billions saved. I thanked her sincerely and said I'd remember it. She said it was part business and part personal investment in me, and left it at that. We understood each other. When the ship landed in Longxin City, Pu headed off to handle the Star Academy dungeon contamination task instructor Lu Chen had assigned him. The rest of us flew straight back to the training camp. The moment I stepped inside the training camp's formation zone, my identity token buzzed. A notice had gone out to all new students. Second newcomer tournament in 2 days. Number 1 martial arts arena. No holds barred arena format. I touched the lucky coin. The equipment I'd won from the first tournament. The reward this time would probably be better. I decided first place was mine. Instructor Lu Chen told everyone to rest and headed off to report the tournament results. Fang Yinqiu left to start coordinating the Chamber of Commerce integration. I looked at the dungeon portal in the distance and headed straight for it. In the high-level gravity training area, other students were watching through explosion-proof glass as 2 people inside a 100 times gravity room refused to be the first to leave. They'd been in there almost 2 hours. One was Shen Jingli, blood-red eyes, blood mist around him. The other was Luo Xichen, shirtless, black dragon-scale patterns visible on his skin. The 2 were trading insults while secretly being shocked by each other. Shen Jinglei hadn't expected another divinity holder to show up and match him. Luo Xichen thought joining Tianlong had been the right call. Then both their tokens buzzed simultaneously with the tournament notice. They read it at the same time, still locked under 100 times gravity, neither willing to be the first to look away. Both Shen Jinglei and Luo Xichen lit up when they saw the tournament notice. Shen Jinglei said his blade had been waiting. Luo Xichen said he'd personally blast Shen Jinglei into pieces on the arena stage. Shen Jingli dismissed that entirely. He said his only real opponent was Lu Fang, someone 100 times more monstrous than Luo Xichen. Luo Xichen burst out laughing and told him to give up on that idea. When Shen Jinglei pushed back, Luo Xichen said he'd fought me recently. 2 summons, blasted to pieces. Shen Jinglei was stunned for a few seconds, then called Luo Xichen useless for losing to just 2 money ghosts. Luo Xichen stopped mid-retort. He asked Shen Jinglei to repeat what he'd said. Only 2 money ghosts? Shen Jinglei held up his fingers in a cross. 10 of them total. Silence in the gravity room. Luo Xichen's expression collapsed completely. When he'd fought me, I'd only sent 1/5 of my summons. The image of all 10 coming at him hit him at once. His legs went soft and he sat down in the corner, hugged his knees, and buried his face in his arms. Shen Jinglei watched him shut down and moved on. Back at the training camp, I spent the day grinding dungeons and hit level 217. The density and experience rates at the training camp were significantly better than anywhere outside. I finished 1 dungeon and went straight into the next. In Jiangcheng, the Fangfang Chamber of Commerce headquarters had been on edge for 7 days. The longest I'd gone without sending resources back. Steward Zhang was pacing. The other executives were quietly worried that if something had happened to me, the chamber would collapse. Steward Zhang snapped at anyone who suggested danger, though his clenched fists gave him away. Then his phone rang. City Lord Han Qianshan of Jiangcheng, voice cracking with urgency, told him to get to the Profession Center immediately. City Lord Han Qianshan called Steward Zhang and told him to get to the Profession Center immediately. A good thing, a monumental thing, something that could be recorded in Jiangcheng's history 10,000 times over. Then he hung up. Steward Zhang had never heard Han Qianshan lose his composure before. He got there in 10 minutes to find the entire 1 kilometer radius around the profession center under maximum military lockdown, guards every few steps. He was escorted through to an underground plaza inside. 60 bronze dungeon gates stood in rows across the plaza. Han Xianshan grabbed Steward Jiang by the shoulders and told him, 60 gates, ranging from level 200 to level 400. In a city where people above level 200 were rare, a level 400 dungeon descending was incomprehensible. Han Xianshan confirmed they'd come from me. Steward Jiang sat down on the ground. The development rights to 60 high-level dungeons, worth more than everything else in Jiangcheng combined, now belonged to the Fangfang Chamber of Commerce. Then a pressure arrived from outside that made the city defense troops struggle to breathe. Han Xianshan went into combat mode. A refined middle-aged man in gold-rimmed glasses walked in with a small team. Feng Mingyuan, representing the Fang Family Chamber of Commerce, sent by the eldest miss. He introduced himself to Steward Jiang and explained that the Fang family would be providing full-service support for the development of all 60 dungeons and the monetization of future resources. He said he was looking forward to working under Steward Jiang's guidance. The Fang family, a national top-tier business empire, had come to a third-tier city to provide labor services for the Fangfang Chamber of Commerce. Steward Jiang and Han Xianshan looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. What had I done out there? I came out of the dungeon at level 219 and did the morning wealth recruitment with Little Orange Cat. The number that came back was 4.5 million gold, almost double the previous day's 2 million. The only explanation was that the 60 dungeons had arrived in Jiangcheng overnight, and the Chamber of Commerce's foundation had already started expanding. I picked up Little Orange Cat, decided no dungeon grinding today, and headed to the martial arts arena. The arena was packed with every new cadet. After a month of training, the group that had stumbled in looking fresh and arrogant now had a sharpness to them. In one corner, Shen Jinglei was sighing over his level 202. Most of the cadets around him were above level 300. He knew he couldn't beat the high-level ones, probably couldn't beat Luo Xichin in an unrestricted fight, and obviously couldn't beat me. He was staring down the likelihood of finishing last and feeling the embarrassment in advance. Across the arena, Luo Xichin was standing with his arms crossed, looking disdainful, while internally panicking about the same problem from the opposite direction. He could beat people at his level easily, but fighting across dozens of levels was a different question. His relief came from spotting Shen Jinglei sulking in the corner. At least he wouldn't be last. Closer to the front, Shi Yanqing, Gu Qinghan, and Wen Xingqi were talking quietly. All three were above level 300. They agreed I was the only one they were genuinely worried about, despite being significantly higher level. Wen Xingqi pointed out that with my growth rate, once I got within 30 levels of them, they probably wouldn't even have the confidence to stand in front of me. Shi Yanqing said this tournament was likely their best, maybe only best, opportunity to beat me, while the level gap still gave them an advantage worth talking about. All three decided to go all out. Then footsteps. Steady, unhurried. From the arena entrance. The noise dropped to complete silence instantly. Every head turned. I walked into the arena with my hands in my pockets and found a corner to stand in. No aura display, nothing dramatic. The silence that followed me in anyway was something I didn't particularly engineer. I found a spot, leaned back, and started dazing off. Nobody came near. After a while, instructors Mo Jingxin and Jiaji dropped in from above and landed in the center. Instructor Xiaji looked over the group and said they finally had some resemblance to actual Tianlong students. Both instructors found me in the corner immediately. They already knew about the 61 dungeons. Neither said anything about it in front of the group. The format, 43 newcomers, one-on-one virtual bracket with full pain simulation, elimination until top 3. Instructor Mo Jingxin announced the rewards. 1 free skill point for third, 3 for second, 5 for first. The arena reacted like she'd announced the discovery of a new continent. Free skill points were essentially mythical resources outside of legendary first kills and national quests. Shi Yanqing's calm expression cracked. Shen Jinglei's eyes went red. Everyone's breathing changed. Mine did too. 5 free skill points for first place. First place was going to be mine. The bracket draw ran on the screen. At the very top, first round, bye, Lu Fang. I stared at it, touched the lucky coin on my chest, and thought about how I hadn't even activated it. Everyone else had various reactions. The general feeling was that the heavens were specifically protecting me. Instructor Xiaji told everyone to connect to the virtual pods. Consciousness transferred, and the Colosseum materialized around us. Arena number 1. Shen Jingli, level 2, 01, facing a level 3, 1-2, Berserker with dual axes. The Berserker told him he wouldn't hold back. Shen Jinglei told him to stop talking and fight, eyes already crimson, and launched himself forward. Shen Jinglei lost his first round fight against a level 312 Berserker. He went full offense and traded damage for damage, but over 100 levels of attribute difference was too much to bridge with ferocity alone. He took an axe hit and got knocked off the arena. The Berserker saluted him after and said if Shen Jinglei had been level 300, the fight would have gone the other way. Luo Xichin lost too. He pushed a level 305 mage to a genuinely dangerous position using assassination techniques and Black Dragon power. but the mage had deep enough mana and crowd control to wear him down over time. Both losses, but both earned respect for how far they pushed across the level gap. Shi Yanqing fought a level 305 heavy shield guard. 10 sword strikes, methodical and fast, no flashy effects. On the 10th, the great shield cracked in two, sword tip at the throat. Done. The first round finished. 22 remained, plus me with the bye. 10-minute rest, then the second round draw appeared on screen. First match, Lu Fang versus Meng Fanchao. Meng Fanchao was a 1,000 machine puppeteer. Hidden class, best at group combat and attrition. His level was around level 305, nearly 90 levels above me. Instructors Xia Ji and Mo Jingxin discussed it between themselves, and both admitted they couldn't call the outcome. We took the center arena. Meng Fanchao said the arena was a place for going all out, and that giving everything was the greatest respect he could show. I agreed and told him to enlighten me. He opened immediately with his trump card. 1,000 machine technique, myriad phenomena. 20 summoning arrays lit up across the arena floor simultaneously. 20 dark purple humanoid puppets, each over 2 meters tall, holding heavy weapons, crashed into formation around him with their red mechanical eyes locked on me. The pressure from 20 combat puppets hit all at once. I snapped my fingers and called out all 10 money ghosts. 20 dark purple puppets on one side, 10 golden money ghosts on the other. Before either side moved, the auras collided in the center of the arena, and the money ghost's golden pressure started pushing back and fragmenting Meng Fanchao's killing intent. The standoff lasted under 3 seconds before his side started losing ground. In the stands, Shen Jinglei couldn't believe it. Shi Yanqing noted that Meng Fanchao had once solo-dragged a level 350 boss to death with his 20 puppet formation, known as the absolute defense of the same rank, and he was already losing the aura exchange before the fight even started. Meng Fanchao recognized he couldn't afford to stall. His fighting spirit would collapse under the pressure. He committed to the offensive and formed a precise strangulation formation with his puppets, charging in. I told the money ghosts to tear them apart. The two sides hit. 5 puppets at the front made contact with money ghost fists and shattered into scrap. The 3 money ghosts that took concentrated fire from the remaining puppets had a few shallow white marks on their skin. Nothing more. Meng Fanchao stared at that result. His puppets used armor-piercing weapons plus nearly 100 levels of attribute advantage. That would have punched holes in a level 300 boss. It left scratches. He activated 1,000 machine technique. Reassemble. The scrapped puppets flew back together and stood up intact. Both sides went into a sustained melee. Money ghosts punching puppets apart. Puppets reassembling and returning to formation immediately, the formation slowly accumulating minor scratches on the money ghosts over time. On the surface, it looked like a close fight. From Meng Fanchao's perspective, it was a nightmare. His puppets couldn't withstand one punch. His formation couldn't break through the defense. And his puppets' speed, normally their key advantage, wasn't faster than the money ghosts. He said internally that he felt like he was sending infants with toothpicks against 10 armed adults. While the fight was going on, I was watching Meng Fanchao's finger movements and the puppets' formation coordination and taking mental notes. The damage distribution, the staggered attack frequencies to close off evasion space, his micromanagement was clearly better than mine. I acknowledged it and used the fight to learn. Shi Yanqing figured out what I was doing from the stands. I was using Meng Fanchao as a training target for my own formation control. Meng Fanchao noticed my manipulation improving in real time. In the early exchanges, 4 or 5 puppets were getting smashed per wave. By the later waves, half of his 20 were being blown apart in a single collision. He was watching his tactical advantage disappear in front of him. He activated Source Burning Boil, an overdraft skill that burned the puppets' core energy to multiply their speed and power for a short time. He said it would cost him a fortune in repairs. He used it anyway because losing to someone barely over level 200 was not acceptable. The Berserk puppets flipped the balance. The money ghosts took hits and started accumulating visible damage for the first time, cuts and hammer dents in their armor. Then I stopped moving. I'd been watching the puppets shatter and reassemble through hundreds of exchanges. I told Meng Fanchao I'd noticed that every time a puppet was destroyed, it made small, slightly uncoordinated twisting movements in midair before breaking apart. At first I thought it was physics from the impact. After comparing hundreds of instances, I determined it was deliberate. The puppets were protecting a specific internal component. That component was the key to infinite reassembly, and I'd noticed that the core location was different in every puppet. Chest on some, back on others, shoulders on others. Specifically designed so the enemy couldn't identify a pattern. The arena went silent. Shi Yanqing's scalp prickled. In a high-speed fight, I'd been tracking the individual breakage postures of 20 different puppets simultaneously. Meng Fanchao refused to confirm it, calling his puppets simply indestructible. I said we'd find out. The nearest money ghost took 2 heavy swords into its shoulders without defending, let the sparks fly, and reached out to grab the lead puppet. The money ghost drove its fingers into the number 1 puppet 3 centimeters above its left knee. The core shattered. The puppet's eyes went dark and it collapsed into inert scrap. It didn't reassemble. Meng Fanchao went blank. The weakness he'd hidden across 20 different puppets with 20 different core locations had been found and confirmed in one strike. I told the money ghosts to continue and gave them the other 19 targets. Meng Fanchao snapped out of it, looked at the money ghost's trajectories aimed precisely at each puppet's core, and surrendered immediately. He couldn't afford to lose 19 more permanently. One was already painful enough. I stopped the money ghosts half a meter from contact. Meng Fanchao sat down on the arena floor, recalled his puppets, and said he'd lost completely. He told me fewer than 10% of opponents had ever found the weakness in his 1,000 mechanism puppets, and I'd found it the fastest. While under simultaneous siege from 20 berserk puppets, he called it an outright freakish observation ability. I said I'd also learned from the fight. His micromanagement and formation coordination had taught me a lot. The stands erupted, crossing 90 levels to beat a top 10 hidden class in a direct confrontation without even using full strength. That was the part Shi Yanqing pointed out to Gu Qinghan and Wen Xingqi. The three of them acknowledged they could each beat Meng Fanchao quickly, but their advantage was that they already knew his background. I'd figured out his core mechanism from scratch during the fight itself, and I'd done it while treating the whole thing as micromanagement practice. Shen Jinglei turned to Luo Sichen and asked if he thought they'd ever catch up to me in this lifetime. Luo Sichen lowered his head and said he didn't know. Then Instructor Mo Jingxin stepped forward and said to the whole arena, with precisely targeted contempt, that a bunch of level 300 plus geniuses being scared to breathe because of someone barely over level 200 was embarrassing. She told them they might as well go home and stop wasting space on the arena stage. The insult landed exactly as intended. Instructor Mo Jingxin's mockery did what she intended. Shi Yanqing straightened up and said flatly that if he met me on the arena right now, he wouldn't lose. The other level 300 plus cadets came back to life around him. She gave them a cold snort and told them their mouths had better match their performance. Shi Yanqing's next match came up immediately. He walked out looking different. The frustration had converted cleanly into focus. His opponent had just raised a defensive shield when Shi Yanqing passed through it like it wasn't there and held a blade to the back of his neck. One move. The audience stared. Rounds continued. 11 people remained, and the next bracket draw came up. Gu Qinghan versus me. The crowd debated. Mages counter summoners naturally. Gu Qinghan had crushed Meng Fanchao's puppet army with large-scale magic in a previous spar, and his level advantage was massive. Shi Yanqing said the outcome was hard to predict because I couldn't be judged by normal standards. We took the arena. Gu Qinghan was dressed in white, various attribute lights drifting around him. He said he'd never expected to face a cadet nearly 100 levels below him as a genuine threat. I said his aura was giving me real pressure. The match started. I called out all 10 money ghosts and let them stand in front of me as a wall. No attack command. Gu Qinghan frowned immediately. From a tactical standpoint, a summoner giving the initiative to a high-burst mage was close to handing over the win. I said it was rare to face a top-tier mage king, and I wanted to enjoy the fight properly before it ended. That landed badly. Gu Qinghan slammed his staff down, magic elements boiling around him, and told me I'd pay a painful price for my arrogance. Then, despite saying that, he was quietly aware that my posture, relaxed, waiting for him to move, made me look like the high-level expert in the situation. He suppressed the frustration and reached into his robe for a large die, fist-sized, glowing with an unknown shimmer. The magic elements around him resonated with it strangely. I looked at it and for the first time felt like I genuinely couldn't read what I was looking at. My smile got wider. Luo Xichen felt an instinctive unease the moment Gu Qinghan produced the die. Shen Jinglei explained. Gu Qinghan's class was Destiny Mage, and the die was his core companion equipment from Awakening. Every time he cast a skill, he could roll it simultaneously. A roll of 1 meant no change. Rolling 2, 3, or 5 multiplied the skill's power by that number. Rolling 6 meant a 10 times amplification. Rolling 4 meant skill backlash. Luo Xichen processed a 10 times amplification on a forbidden level ultimate and went quiet. Shi Yanqing, watching from the stands, said he hoped Gu Qinghan had good luck today. When Gu Qinghan was lucky, even Shi Yanqing couldn't guarantee he'd hold up against him. Gu Qinghan opened with Thunder Dragon art. A massive purple electric dragon that cracked the arena floor with just its shockwaves. He rolled the die simultaneously. It landed on 3. The dragon expanded to 3 times its size. The sky above the arena turned deep purple. And the pressure made the spectators feel like breathing was difficult. I pointed at it and told Money One to go catch it. Money One punched the 3 times amplified Thunder Dragon head on. The collision blinded the arena. When the light cleared, the Thunder Dragon was scattered sparks. Money One's right arm had a deep, charred wound down to the bone. The first serious injury a Money Ghost had taken in a direct skill hit. Meng Fanchao watched from below and noted that his entire match's output had barely left white marks. Gu Qinghan's single amplified hit had done what 20 berserk puppets couldn't. Gu Qinghan didn't stop. He unleashed a continuous barrage. Freeze 1,000 miles, howling gale, earth spike strangulation. Rolling the die with each one. He hit 2, 5, and 3 on consecutive rolls without a single 4 appearing. His luck was running exceptionally well. Every spell came amplified. I still didn't order an attack. I rotated the money ghosts through the barrage, letting their bodies absorb it. Guqing Han rolled a 6. The 10 times amplification. A flame explosion fireball that was already several meters wide expanded to 50 meters in diameter in a tenth of a second, a miniature sun that began melting the arena floor. Even I felt genuine surprise at that one. Off the stage, Shi Yanqing said he'd need his trump card to block it. Luo Xichin said he'd be evaporated in under a second. The explosion hit. When the smoke cleared, I was standing unscathed. In front of me, Money One had both hands pressed to the ground with Earth Barrier raised, a defensive skill that had absorbed the entire 10 times flame explosion. The shield collapsed from the effort, but everyone behind it was fine. Guqing Han couldn't process it. The instructors in the air compared notes. Money One's defensive skill had blocked a 10 times amplified finishing blow. Instructor Ziaji just shook his head. Guqing Han privately knew his situation was deteriorating. The dice of fate wasn't a fair die internally. As rolls accumulated in a single battle, the probability of rolling a 4 increased. He'd already used many rolls, and his luck buffer was running out. His only option was to keep pressing, but the risk of a backlash kept rising. He decided to go all out. 5 elements simultaneously, 5 die phantoms spinning in the air at once. Ice, fire, wind, lightning, earth, all charged at the same time. The kind of move that could either win or completely collapse him in one go. I watched all 5 dice spinning and thought about it. His entire combat system depended fundamentally on luck. I pulled out the lucky coin. I activated Master of Luck. 5 seconds of being the heaven's most favored person. At the exact moment the lucky coin activated, Guqing Han felt a chill he couldn't explain.